What's the worst thing a roommate has ever done to you? Freshman year of college, I was paired with this girl, we'll call her Megan, who seemed perfect on paper. Quiet, pre-med, early riser like me. 2 weeks in, I noticed my prescription Adderall going missing. I have severe ADHD and literally cannot function without it. I'd fought for years to get properly diagnosed and medicated. At first, I thought I was miscounting, or maybe taking it without remembering. Then one day, I deliberately counted out exactly 17 pills before bed, woke up to 14. I started hiding them inside an old vitamin bottle, but they still disappeared. One night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of Megan quietly rifling through my desk drawer, caught her red-handed with my pill bottle. When confronted, she burst into tears saying she needed them to study, that her parents would disown her if she didn't maintain a 4.0, and begged me not to report her. Against my better judgment, I felt bad and agreed not to tell anyone if she promised to stop. She swore on her life. The stealing stopped for exactly 1 week. The following Friday, I had my biggest exam of the semester, organic chemistry worth 40% of my grade. I took my medication that morning and felt nothing. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the exam hall, unable to focus. My thoughts scattered everywhere. I barely finished half a test. That night, I crushed up one of my pills and mixed it with water. It dissolved completely. Normal Adderall wouldn't do that. Someone had replaced my medication with sugar pills or something similar. I confronted Megan. This time she didn't cry. She laughed and said, "Prove it." Said it was my word against hers, and who would believe the girl with mental problems anyway? Threatened that if I reported her, she'd tell housing I was selling my prescription meds and that she'd found buyers' texts on my phone. I was devastated. My doctor wouldn't refill my prescription early, and without my medication, I was barely functioning. My grades plummeted. Megan, meanwhile, was thriving, studying all night, acing exams, suddenly the star of her competitive re-med cohort. Desperate, I called my older sister who works in pharmaceuticals. She suggested something that initially shocked me. She mailed me caffeine pills that looked identical to my Adderall, but contained approximately 300 milligrams of caffeine each, the equivalent of 3 to 4 strong cups of coffee in one dose. I replaced all my remaining Adderall that Megan had already tampered with these caffeine bombs. Then I told Megan I was going home for the weekend and deliberately left the bottle in my hiding spot. Sunday night, I returned to find Megan pacing our room, drenched in sweat. Her eyes were dilated, hands shaking uncontrollably. Empty energy drink cans littered her desk. She hadn't slept in 48 hours. Turns out she'd taken 5 pills Friday night before her big microbiology practical lab exam, the equivalent of chugging 15 to 20 cups of coffee at once. Not only had she been awake for 2 straight days, but she'd started hallucinating during her practical exam. Apparently, she'd become convinced the lab bacteria samples were moving and trying to escape. She knocked over an entire tray of cultures, contaminated everyone's experiments, and had a complete meltdown in front of the department head and medical school advisors. The icing on the cake? In her sleep-deprived, caffeine psychosis state, she'd apparently admitted to her professor that she'd been taking something to help her study. The university launched an official investigation. Megan was placed on academic probation pending a disciplinary hearing. Her medical school recommendations were withdrawn. Her parents, both doctors, showed up the next day to move her out, faces grim with disappointment. As they packed her things, her father found her stash of my stolen medication hidden inside her pillow. The look of absolute betrayal on his face was something I'll never forget. When the housing director asked if I wanted to press charges for theft of a controlled substance, I simply said, "I think she's learned her lesson about taking things that don't belong to her." I got a single room for the rest of the year, and a lockbox for my medication.